And with that, Jack dislocated the finger that was pointing at him. "Arg, you bastard, I'm going to kill you." Neither Frank nor Sabrina had expected that Jack would go physical here. But Sabrina felt happy but at the same time worried. After all, Frank was a member of Dante family. But after a while, the worries disappeared as she looked at the building behind her. Even the Dante family had to discuss before buying it. On the other hand, Jack bought the whole building the moment that he set his eyes on it. There's no way, and nobody had a balance of over $1 billion in his account. "Better get lost right now," Jack stated calmly, as if he hadn't heard Frank's threats. "You dare? I'm going to make sure that you'll disappear from this world today. Not even your family will be spared," Frank roared after hearing Jack's words. "You're more than welcome to go and destroy my family. But I'm not sure that you have the ability to do that," Jack spoke coldly. Frank was immediately furious. This was like Jack telling him that Dante family was inferior to his. He was just about to pounce on him when Tim and the other two guards held him. Tim knew that Jack was his new employer. After all, they had signed the contract inside there, in his presence. And he'd seen Jack transferring the money. Seeing that he was being held back, Frank pointed at Sabrina and yelled, "You're just standing there while looking at these dogs holding me and that brat over there talking to me as if I'm his mate? Be sure that I'm going to cancel the deal. We wanted to purchase a few floors, but now we're canceling the deal." With that, Frank showed his intention to leave. Thus, under the escort of the guards alongside Tim, Frank left the building's compound. Sabrina had wanted to tell him that she'd already sold the building. But upon seeing Frank's furious face, she decided against it and thought that she would just call the family butler and inform him of this. As Frank left the place, he furiously thought to himself, "You just wait. You're just a small real estate agency manager. See if you won't come begging me to purchase the floors of that building. Humph. As for that brat, I'm going to make sure that he gets through a lot more." After taking a few steps, he suddenly remembered that he didn't even know Jack's name. He stopped and looked at the three that were escorting him out. "What's that brat's name?" "I'm sorry, sir, but I cannot tell you any information about him," Tim replied. Among the three, he was the only one that knew Jack's name. From the way that Frank was behaving, he was sure that he was planning something sinister. But Jack was going to be his boss. No, he was now his boss. How could he, a person in charge of security, give out information that could compromise his boss's security? Upon hearing Tim's reply, Frank's expression darkened further. He looked at Tim ferociously and said, "You know that I'm from the Dante family, the overlord of Inchoate City. In other words, I can cause you more problems that you can imagine. So, if you don't tell me his name, I'm going to get a group of people to cause you problems here every day." Upon hearing this, Tim's expression wasn't good. He also knew the power of Dante family in Inchoate City. If they decided to make things hard for him, there would be many complications. If this was another person, Tim would have surely thrown him out of here by now. But since he was from the Dante family, he could only escort him out, making sure not to be rough on him. After thinking things through, he felt that just a name wasn't that important information, right? Furthermore, a person that could purchase such a building wasn't someone small. So, he was sure that after Frank investigated this, he would give up, not trying to offend such a big shot. He's Mr. Jack. That's all that he knew. After all, he wasn't allowed to peep on the contents of the contract. That was something that involved the two parties. Frank, who was still smugly waiting for more information, was stumped on not hearing another word from Tim. He looked at him, and upon seeing that he had no intention of saying another word, he asked furiously, "What? That's all? You must be joking with me." Helplessly, Tim shook his head and said, "Mr. Frank, it's not that I want to hide anything. No, actually, that's all that I know about him. And even if I knew more about him, I wouldn't tell you a thing about him." Upon seeing Tim's expression, the suspicion in Frank's eyes reduced. But he asked another question. What were they here to do? Inspecting the building. Tim replied simply. He didn't say anything about the purchase of the building. He was sure that Frank was a smart person and could already guess the reason for the inspection. Who knew that he wasn't? How dare that be *TCH brings her cousin or brother here to dirty the floors that our Dante family wanted to buy? Just you wait. And with that, he strode towards the Mercedes-AMG. After getting inside, he drove away, heading towards the Dante family mansion that was located in Happy Residential Area, one of the luxury residential area in the city. On the way, he took out his phone before making a call. After a while, a male voice came from the other side. "Yes, Frank?" This was the family's butler. "I would like you to help me investigate a boy called Jack. He's got some involvement in the business overlord building. I've been trying to reach out to Sabrina, but that lady has been making things hard for me. I think that this might be related to this young man. Frank's tone this time wasn't arrogant as the one he used to talk to Jack and the others. Are you sure about this? You know how important that building is, don't you? The old voice was filled with suspicion. Yes, I know. That's why I was asking for that kid to be investigated. After all, he'd gained access to the building. Frank hurriedly replied. Okay, I know what to do. The old voice replied before hanging up. Seeing that the phone had already been hanged up, Frank's expression darkened. But he could do nothing but curse at that old man. After seeing that the nuisance was gone, Jack went back to the underground parking lot and drove his Bentley Continental GT out. Since he had promised her a meal, he took her to a well-known 5-star hotel present in Inchoate City, Glaze Hotel. This was just a branch of this popular hotel. The Glaze Hotel was a well-known 5-star hotel in the country, so the dishes served here were top-notch, and the total cost of the meal was $78,950. Then, he took Sabrina back to Homescope Properties Limited. There, he received the keys and the certificates of each floor. After placing them in the car, he drove away, leaving behind Sabrina. Sabrina then went to her office under the gazes of her juniors. After getting into her office, she looked at the phone that was on the desk. After seeing that Jack had a balance of over $1 billion, she'd been flustered and that she completely forgot about taking her phone along when they were going to the bank. Picking up the phone, she saw that there were more than 14 missed calls and about 10 messages. As for the calls, most of them were from Frank. He was the one in charge of negotiating the deal of the building. After some thought, she decided to make a call to the butler of Dante family and inform them that the building had been sold already. But before she could call, her phone rang. Upon closer look, she found that it was an unfamiliar caller ID. After some thought, she picked the call. Hello, may I know who you are? Mrs. Sabrina, I'm Kevin Dante, the current head of Dante family. A male voice introduced itself. The voice was quite deep and was filled with majesty and authority. Sabrina's heart skipped a beat when she heard of the other party's identity. She'd never expected that the family head would call her. After calming down, she replied politely and respectfully, Oh, it's Mr. Kevin. Forgive me for my rudeness. It's okay, Kevin replied. May I know why you called? Sabrina asked, though she could already link it to the business overlord building and Jack. I wanted to talk about the issue concerning the business overlord building. Kevin replied calmly. Just as I thought, Sabrina thought to herself. Oh, I see. But there's something that I wanted to tell you first. Sabrina replied. No need to worry about that. Let me speak first, Kevin interrupted. And upon getting Sabrina's consent, he continued. We have already discussed the issue concerning the building. We've decided that we're going to purchase the 15 top floors first. Then, we are going to purchase the others at the start of next year. Upon hearing his words, Sabrina could only tap her head as she nervously replied, I'm sorry, Mr. Kevin, but the business overlord building has already been sold. She knew that this was going to cause a big commotion in the city. After all, many people knew that the Dante family was planning to purchase the building. But now, Jack came and paid for everything at a single go. As a real estate agency manager, her role was to sell the buildings to those who wanted to buy them. The Dante family was delaying so much on that. After seeing that Jack was interested in the building, she agreed to sell it to him. What? As expected, Kevin immediately lost his composure. Kevin couldn't remain calm at all. They had planned to purchase the building for a month now. They were taking things at their own pace while thinking that there would be nobody that would be able to purchase it. After all, even they, the overlords of Inchoate City, had to take a certain period of time to collect the current $350 million. It wasn't that they couldn't afford to pay the $700 million at once. It was just that it would affect the cash flow of the Dante Corporation. Such a big corporation needed money. There was no way that they could leave their accounts empty. After all, in the case of emergency, they might fall due to lack of money. And the big corporations could easily fall. The reason, with no money, they were sure that the 5 families that had been beneath them all this while would surely unite to make sure that they would suffer greatly. In this way, they would either collapse or they would be on the same level as the other 5 families if they depended on their connections and foundation to survive. Today, when Frank called, he was present when the butler received the call. So, he had heard what Frank said. And from what he knew, there was no way that Sabrina would ignore them. So, he felt that something was wrong. That was why he called after a period of time. He wanted to confirm some things, and that was the reason as to why he asked Sabrina to let him speak first. It was to make sure that she knew that they were serious about buying the building. But now, he just heard that there was someone that had bought it. What floor was bought? Who was the one that bought it? Kevin asked immediately. Not floors, Mr. Kevin. He bought the whole building at a go and made full payment. Sabrina replied. For some reason, she felt happy bragging about Jack to these rich men of Inchoate City. What did you just say? He bought the whole building? Are you kidding me? This is no time to joke. Who bought it? Kevin sent a barrage of words to Sabrina, and at this moment, she could feel that he was quite anxious. Well, she wasn't sure of it. But she replied honestly, Mr. Kevin, you know that I cannot dare to joke with you concerning such a serious matter. The purchase was done today, about an hour ago. Upon hearing the seriousness in Sabrina's voice, Kevin finally understood that she wasn't joking and that the building had been bought by someone. Now, more than anything, he wanted to know who bought the building. He then thought to himself, did the five cooperate to buy the building? Or did they know about my plan? As he thought of this, he asked, who was the one that bought it? You know that we had come to an agreement, but at the end of the day, you still sold it to someone else. Sabrina could easily feel the anger in Kevin's voice. Though he was trying to conceal it, there was no way that he could hide something like that. It could already be felt in the voice. She trembled a little before replying. It's not that I'm against the Dante family. It's just that, as you know, I look for those that want to buy the building. When he came to purchase the building, you still hadn't made a decision in whether you were going to buy it or not. She then continued, Mr. Jack came here to look for an office building. In the end, he found the business overlord building and fancied it. Then, he offered to pay for it in full. As you know, I had to accept such a deal. Kevin was silent for a moment before asking, Mr. Jack, is he the one that bought it? Sabrina felt that there was something wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. In the end, she nodded and replied, yes, he's the one that bought it. Okay, I got it. And with that, Kevin hung up the phone, leaving the uncertain Sabrina standing in her office, unsure of what to do. Happy residential area. Inside a big and majestic mansion, inside a study room. Kevin dropped the phone on the table and looked at the old man with white hair beside him and said, Uncle Reuben, help me investigate who this Jack is. I want to know if any of the five families have a hand in this. And if they're involved, they would have to suffer. Looking at Kevin's angry and malicious gaze, Reuben sighed and said, don't worry about that. I'll be sure to get all information about him. But what should we do about that building? Find out who's involved in this first. As for the building, we have to get it by all means possible. Either rough or smooth, we cannot afford to lose that building at all. Kevin replied as he sat on the couch that was present in the room. Okay, with that, Reuben left the study room, leaving Kevin behind. Jack didn't know that buying the business overlord building would attract so much attention from the Dante family. Furthermore, it seemed that they wanted to get the building by all means. But even if he knew about it, he wouldn't care about it at all. After all, what could they do to him? Nothing. So what was there to get worried about? Currently, Jack was preparing himself for the banquet that would be held tomorrow evening. He wasn't sure who was holding the banquet, but he was going to get acquainted to some people so that his development here would be faster. After looking at his wardrobe for a period of time, he found that there was nothing that he could use in the occasion. All the clothes that he had were casual. Although he was from Alfonso family, he'd never gone to a banquet that involved the big bosses. But he still knew that he had to put on official clothing so that he could show some respect for the one that had organized the banquet. After thinking things through, he got out of the mansion, got into the Bentley Continental GT, and drove towards Delight Mall. In Inchoate City, there were 3 big malls. They were the Delight Mall, Pride Mall, and finally, Tinko Mall. Amongst the 3, Pride Mall could be said to be leading. But Jack went to Delight Mall because it was closer. After parking the car alongside the other luxurious cars, he got into the mall under the envious gazes of the boys and infatuated gazes of young beauties. This time, he didn't go to Terran designers. After all, they were good in customized clothing, and he was looking for ones that were ready. The banquet was tomorrow, and there was no time for him to wait for the suit to be completed. He looked at the clothing brands that were located on the 2nd floor. Finding that none of them matched his taste, he went to the 4th floor where men's brands could be found. Here, he could see the stores for Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Giorgio Armani, Balenciaga, H&M, Versace, Hermes, Prada, and several others. After thinking, he decided on the one that was closer to him. It was the Louis Vuitton store. This was a top luxury clothing brand. After entering the store, he was welcomed by an enthusiastic sales lady. Welcome, sir. What type of clothes would you like? Jack nodded to himself, as expected of the service of a top brand. Although Jack wasn't wearing anything special, the sales lady didn't look at him in contempt, but welcomed him well. I would like a suit that can be used for a banquet. An official banquet to be precise. I don't know if you can recommend any to me, Jack asked. The lady looked at Jack for a moment before replying, there are several of them that can match you. I think they suit you well. Here, check this one out. As the lady spoke, she showed Jack a two-piece white suit. The suit was made of cotton, and thus was quite comfortable as he touched it. After a thought, Jack entered the changing room to test it out. Well, when he came out of the changing room, he immediately caught the attention of the ladies that were here with their husbands or boyfriends. What a handsome man. He sure gives a rich vibe. Get lost, you gold digger. Only if my boyfriend was 10% as handsome, I could have accepted losing 10 years of my life. What do you mean? Am I not handsome enough? Humph, of course you're not. Look at your big nose. Look at how your head is shaped like a bean seed. Look at how big your eyes are dash. We're done for. You be asterisk TCH. Humph, never let me not see your face again. W what? I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Jack's appearance had caused the infatuation and appreciation to flood towards him from the ladies. But it had also attracted the envy and hatred from the men whose women were attracted to him. Jack looked at the mirror and found that, although the suit was good, he found that it was quite tight for him. It didn't seem that much comfortable as the casual clothes that he usually wore. After thinking things through, he asked, do you have suits that are made from cashmere? After waiting for a moment and receiving no reply, Jack looked at the sales lady and noticed that she was staring at him in a daze. He touched his face before looking at his reflection in the mirror. He noticed that there was nothing wrong. Then, he looked at the lady and waved his hand in front of her. Hello, lady, are you there? Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I was lost there. The lady blushed as she replied with her head lowered. It's okay. Do you have suits made from cashmere? He repeated the question once again.